Hi everyone, I'm Tim McInerney, Town Administrator, Town of Grafton.
And I'm Becca Meekins, Assistant Town Administrator for the Town of Grafton.
We're here today to talk about town meeting that's coming up at the high school on the 21st at 7:30. We hope you can all attend to vote on some important topics and some general housekeeping items for the Town of Grafton. So sorry, go ahead.
And just a reminder that on the 29th of October, the following week, there will be a special election to fill the vacant seat on the Select Board.
That's a good point. We might remind you at the end of that. When we go through these warrant articles, I'll just tell you at the beginning, Finance Committee has been meeting all week. We're doing this so we can get information out there in addition to the work that they're doing. So we don't have final recommendations from them to report to you. That's obviously within their purview. We're presenting to you what we have currently today. There was one other piece relative to town meeting. We will start at 7:30. We will go with the clickers as best we can. The clickers worked. Dave Robbins and the IT committee have worked through all the glitches. I just might not have manpower to operate the system. So I just want to qualify that up front. We may or may not have them. We'll have them there. If we have manpower, we will certainly deploy them. So having said that, we'll start in with Article 1 for October town meeting. We are going to adjust the fiscal year 20 budget. There's not a lot of adjustments. The adjustments we'll be making are twofold. Some are inside the operating budget that's already appropriated. Additional money will need to be raised and appropriated because we have additional new growth that we did not anticipate that hasn't been certified yet, but the assessor's office is working with the Department of Revenue to get new growth certified either right before town meeting or right after. But we carried a $550,000 figure for new growth. It's looking to be more like 800 to 850. We're only going to raise and appropriate up to 775,000 of new money through these articles. So I just wanted to clarify that. If people have questions before the 21st, we encourage them to call our office and talk to Becca or I. They can talk to the accountant's office, or they can talk to the assessor as well. For any one of these questions, we'll get you answers as best we can, but we want people to have good information to make good decisions at town meeting. So please call us if you have questions, 508-839-5335, and we'll be happy to help you. So let's jump right into Article 1. The first is a transfer within an operating budget. So inside the town administrator's budget, we are going to ask to move $4,500 from town administration expenses to town administration personnel. And for the appropriation side, we have 11.4 we'll raise and appropriate for town clerk personnel. There's two pieces in the town clerk. One is a special election that Rebecca just mentioned for the 29th. And the second is we've had an advertisement for over a year for an assistant town clerk's position. We've gone through several resume reviews and interviews. The $40,000 that was allocated for the salary, we just could not attract anyone for that number. So we've exhausted every possibility. We do have a person that's willing to take that position on for $46,500. So that's the difference in that town clerk number will go up by that amount. Health insurance will make an adjustment to. Many of you know we have. We're in the GIC. We moved out of the GIC. There's a lot of intricate parts for our health insurance. So the $75,000 is to deal with incentives we offered people to go to the GIC and also to come out for deductibles and HRAs. So that's what that $75,000 will cover. And enrollments, new enrollments that happen throughout the year. If people have a qualifying event and they enroll, there's variant that needs to be dealt with at a town meeting and needs to be appropriated by the community. 6,200 election and registration expenses. Those are town clerk items as well. There's a $50,000 raise and appropriate for municipal expenses. This is to finish the last ramp on this building for handicap accessibility. Rebecca applied for a grant. She's actually been very good and instrumental in getting grants approved and getting additional money to the town. So I'll have her talk about the application process and what the last ramp estimate was when we did the bidding.
Yeah, so we had to split the construction work for this building into two phases. So this is the second phase of the project, which would be to, like Tim said, finish the last ramp on the back of the building and then add some additional accessible railings to the remaining ramps. The estimates from both the ADA transition study and based on the first round of bids that we got tells us that the ballpark is in the $50,000 range. I went before the Disability Commission, presented this grant opportunity and idea to them. They are in full support. We have applied for the grant, and we will know by December of this year whether or not we receive it.
So what'll happen, you might have a logical question, all right, we appropriate the 50,000 now and we get the grant. We don't spend the 50,000, it'll just roll back to, fund balance, which will turn to free cash. So again, if there's questions on that type of stuff, you can certainly call us and we'll explain it in more detail. 17,750 for the Board of Health expenses. That's basically 1/4 of the assessment for Worcester County mosquito control, or Central Mass mosquito control. So we're gonna vote on that later in the meeting, recommended by the Board of Health. I certainly support it if people wanted to know where I stand on the matter. I brought it before 2 town meetings, it was voted down. But now with full support of the Board of Health, I hope people will see the wisdom in having this service provided to us. The overall cost annually is about 71,000 as it stands now. That in fiscal 21 will be a deduction off of the cherry sheet and go right to Central Mass mosquito control. So we'll pay for the first quarter because they'll start to do work ahead of July to mitigate mosquitoes in Grafton and also to test.
Just quickly on that point, there will be an outreach meeting next week, October 16th, Wednesday, where the director of the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project will be here in Grafton to answer questions about what the program entails, the work that they do, the preventative work that they do, and we'll be putting more information about that meeting out on social media and the website, but just so people know, there will be an opportunity to ask those questions ahead of town meeting.
And there's 2 times, right? They did one in the day
And one in the evening.
and one in the evening, I think 2 and 7.
Roughly, we'll put the
The exact,
flyer
but there are
up,
2 to accommodate people's questions to Tim DeChamps. And then finally, a $32,000 ask. It was on the capital plan last year, or we learned about it late in the process for capital. But since we have that available funding through Raise and Appropriate, we want to take on a carbon monoxide testing devices installed at South Grafton Elementary School. So that's a $32,000 request from the school department, which we want to see that project get underway. So that's the lion's share of the 192,000 of additional Raise and Appropriate. There will be some levy capacity at the end of that. It will not be a lot, but it'll depend on how much the Department of Revenue certifies as new growth. So that doesn't play out until November, when the Board of Selectmen sets the tax rate. I won't dive into the detail of that. It's a separate topic, but we'll move on to Article 2. There are 2 prior fiscal year bills, one for 289 and one for 204. These are just, I can't even tell you what the actual oversight was, if they didn't bill on time or if we lost the bill. There's thousands of bills that we process every year. To lose 2 in the process, I think, is pretty good. But again, we have to ask town meeting for its permission, and it needs 9/10 of a vote to pay a prior year bill. So, is there anything you want to add to 2?
Yep.
3, fire department retirement. We have people that reach certain ages, and we have a bylaw that pays them $100 for every year of service upon their retirement and their age eligible. So we have that allocation, 25,000 we're carrying for that?
Yep.
So they provide a great service and obviously very valuable to the community to have those people volunteering. So to pay them out upon retirement is a great deal and well deserved. Article 4 will be passing over. Article 5 is a CPC article, actually 5 through 11 really are CPA articles. I'll just tell you that number 5 deals with creating an interior plan and drawings for the Cisco homestead. So that's on there for a $45,000 CPA approval. The rest are adjustments to CPA. Number 10 is a baseline report for Grafton land that needs to be done from the state's.
Yeah, so properties that have conservation restrictions that are held by the land trust or TPC that may be town-owned, they do require these reports be submitted to the state. So based on the recent Robinson property purchase, and the Great Meadows Gateway purchase, those two will need reports created for them. So Articles 10 and 11 deals with funding those reports.
And we have three, they're done by private, groups
Firms, yep.
that'll provide those proposals. So we have three that are being reviewed now, and we'll award them once the appropriation is made. So Article 12, a lot of talk about this relative to Public Works. Again, I can't stress enough that I want people to call us. I want to have conversations if we need to with folks. But this is for the construction, for the library, for DPW, I apologize. So the contingency was a little bit thin in this project. They hit a lot of ledge on this project. There was paving of an estimated value of about $170,000 that I thought could be included in the road stabilization account, but it cannot be because it's not Chapter 90 eligible. So, and there's also gas tanks that we need to move above ground and move them off premise from the police station and move them to the new DPW facility. With regards to tanks, I think it's important to note that, 6 years ago, we moved the diesel tank above ground at DPW on Upton Street. We moved it above ground. It was not leaking, but we had an appropriation, we had a capital article for it. We knew we were gonna take that tank when we eventually built another facility, so we were forward thinking in that, moving that tank above ground and then being able to move it to the new site. Unfortunately, we didn't have an appropriation for the gas tanks out at the police station, so that unleaded fuel is gonna be above ground and on site at DPW. So that's what those four things essentially, that is what this $1 million covers. Now, what does that mean to everyone in town? When we started to talk about the library project and DPW, we had an average cost or an average tax impact for the average single-family house. And that was $370 was the average impact for these two projects to come on board. Because the construction estimate, when we did the estimate of what the impact was, for the library construction was $1.8 million higher for the estimate than what the actual bids came in at. Both projects combined will end up costing less, even though we're allocating $1 million more. So I understand that might be complicated, but if people could just take away from this that we originally thought you were gonna pay for both projects on average $370 a year for both projects, now you'll pay $365 on average. Everybody's gonna change based on value, but that's what the average is at the time of knowing what the assessments and what the estimates were for construction. So if people have questions or concerns, I encourage them to call us and we can talk you through those particular points. We'll cover it more at town meeting. Obviously, people will come with questions who don't see this video, but if you have them ahead of time, please call us. We did apply to the Department of Revenue to keep this $1 million exempt from Proposition 2.5. They've agreed with our application and they've approved that, but it does require a town meeting to approve by 2/3 majority the additional $1 million that needs to be borrowed for the cost of DPW. Bottom line, we are minimizing or lowering the impact to the taxpayer because we were fortunate in how we bid out the library. So both get borrowed separately, but in terms of the total impact, we're not gonna borrow more than we needed for both projects combined. But again, we encourage you to call if you have questions on that. Article 13, Road Improvement Stabilization Fund. We go through this every year where the Board of Selectmen tells the assessors to raise the money, but town meeting has to appropriate the money for roads, so it's $1.5 million. And we do it now in October because the construction season starts March, April. Whenever the weather breaks, we want to get moving, so we can take advantage of a longer construction season as opposed to waiting till May and then waiting for the fiscal year to start in July. Article 14 is a long-range tree replacement removal. It's an ask of $200,000 out of the overlay account, which the assessors has released. And we have a lot of dead trees relative to gypsy moths is probably the biggest, most well-known. There was a death in Worcester County with a motorist traveling vehicle, tree limb fell off of a dead tree and killed a motorist. We do not want that type of thing to happen in Grafton, so we have to take care of these trees, but the replacement is the second biggest piece of this. So we are allocating $200,000 for removal and replacement. Whatever's in the public right of way that's dead, we will remove, but if there's a home there, we want to put a new tree to keep our tree city status, if you will, intact. And obviously, there's a lot of environmental benefits to having trees. We want to put that on private property and have the homeowner maintain them. So we'll dig the hole, we'll plant it, but in terms of maintaining it, watering it, trimming it or whatever, that's going to be on the resident instead of putting it in the public right of way. There's a lot of other benefits to putting it on private property so it doesn't ruin the sidewalk and roots grow through it, and then we have a tripping hazard as well. So we're trying to deal with a lot of pieces relative to Article 14. You want to talk about 15 and 16, Beck?
Sure, so 15 is a roadway acceptance. In order for roads to be considered public in town, they do need town meeting approval, so this is a request. It's come forward, this project's been in the works for a long time, probably 10 years or more. The layout was approved by the select board on October 1st, so we'll be asking the town to accept this as a public way and to maintain it as a public way moving forward. Article 16 is to create a revolving account, for the electric aggregation funds. So you may recall several years ago at town meeting, the town approved aggregating the electric load of all Grafton residents and businesses, which allows us to get lower electricity rates for residents and businesses in town. We have continued the program through the years. We've had great success saving residents over $2 million throughout the life of the program on their electric bills. This 1/10 of a cent that was approved last year to be added onto tax bills.
To electric bills, not tax bills.
Sorry, yes, yes, electric bills, not tax bills. So it's based on the use of electricity. So that funding will go into effect November 1st. You'll see it on your first electric bill, but we need to create a revolving account to put these funds into to allow them to be spent. Just so everyone knows, National Grid has set their winter rate for this coming winter season at 13.982 cents. That is subject to change, but we haven't seen them change it during the season often, so that's what we expect. That is 3.072 cents higher than what the Grafton rate will be even after the adder. So we're getting a good price for electricity, and we're able to do some additional environmental sustainability projects with this adder money. So 16 and 17 both deal with the creation of the account and then setting the spending limit for the account, which we've set at $75,000 in any one fiscal year.
So we get that point, 1/10 of a penny based on the kilowatts used by
Residents and
anyone.
businesses.
But
that
we
are
still
enrolled
save
in-
them almost 4 cents per kilowatt. And
Yep.
National Grid every 6 months changes the rate. So they have a summer rate that's usually higher than the winter rate. So we've done this for 4 years.
Yep.
So our aggregate rate per kilowatt has always been lower than National Grid? Or was there one 6-month
There was
window that
one
was higher?
season where it was higher by like less than a cent. But we still, throughout the life of the program, have saved residents millions of dollars. And we want to continue to do that. The 0.1% is estimated to add less than $1 per month for the average user of electricity in Grafton.
And people can, some people just want to stay with National Grid. You can opt out at any time. But if you're saving 3 cents a kilowatt, you can do the math on whatever your kilowatt is on the bottom of your bill. And we get a lot of questions about bills, and we may end up doing a program just showing people how to read the bill, because you have the generation cost on the back side of a National Grid bill, and then you have all the distribution costs on the front side. We have nothing to do with the distribution costs. Those are costs that are set by National Grid and approved by the Department of Public Utilities. The backside for generation is our rate that we negotiated, which is lower than National Grid. So that's where we save people money. And people get confused on it, but you can opt out. I don't know why you would if you're saving 3 cents per kilowatt, but if you chose to, you could. And the money that the adder generates has to go back to the people who participate in the program. So we need to do a lot more with Mass Save, getting you information about Mass Save so they can get into your homes and businesses and retrofit lighting, better insulation. So there's a lot of programs that we can do to keep your energy costs lower, especially with Massachusetts weather being as volatile as it is. So those are the goals surrounding the energy aggregation and the adder. So if people have questions on this, again, I've said it 4 times now, I'll say it again. Please call us and ask questions. We're happy to talk to anyone at any time. So 18, I'll do this one. This is an easement drainage for Adams Road. We have some residents on Adams Road that are impacted by runoff from the field across the street, namely Estabrook Farm, or the Knowlton Farm, I guess. And they want to mitigate that. So we say the best way we can do that is to run a pipe down Adams Road, 3 or 4 houses down to number 38, and then take a right and go out to the back of that parcel. So we're talking to that landowner, nothing is built there now, to see if he'll gift us that as an easement to put that pipe in and run that water out to the wetlands. If they will not give us that, and if the community wants to solve this water issue, we have to do a taking, which will require 2/3 majority. And there will be a cost associated with that. We're getting appraisals now. We may or may not have those appraisals for a town meeting, but either way, we'll be looking for authorization for our town meeting to authorize the Board of Selectmen to be able to move forward in that taking process. So that's that one. The other is to actually do the project if the taking or the gift was to be established. To lay that pipe I talked about, to get down those 4 or 5 houses and to go down that side lot. We'll be doing the work ourselves, but there will be engineering that'll be needed, and there will be construction oversight and the physical pipe that needs to be laid. That estimate's $130,000, and we're looking for free cash to be used for that $130,000. So those are very, simple snapshots. There's a lot of complexity to it, but again, we just want to give the community a heads up as to what's on the warrant, and if you have questions, we encourage you to call us for both, or any article, but 18 and 19 of those two. 20 and 21 and 22 all deal with charter amendments will be changed to select board. That's what these 3 really deal with. So do you want to add anything to one?
No,
20,
except
21,
that this approval is required by town meeting. It's also required by ballot, just like the last time we changed the charter. So we'll look for town meeting approval in October, and then we will put them on the next available ballot. So that will likely be in March or May of 2020.
All right, good. So that's 21, 22. And 23 is petitioned by the clerk's office. The town clerk in this community is elected. There is a section of Mass General Law that allows for the clerk to be compensated based on being a certified town clerk through an association. It does cap the amount of money, I think, at $1,000. So Candy asked us to put this on. We support it. I think there's probably 2 department heads in this whole organization that need significant adjustments in terms of salary as it's comped against their comparables and their workload and responsibility. Candy is certainly one of them. So this will be a small adjustment. We don't have an appropriation for it. All you're doing is adopting the article that allows it, and then we can fund it as we need moving forward in subsequent fiscal years. 24 is a Capital Improvement Planning Committee bylaw, which Matt Often is going to speak to. There's loose parameters around what the Capital Improvement Planning Committee bylaw is, and they'll work out that detail as they move forward. 25 is to join the mosquito control program. Again, the Board of Health has voted to recommend this, as does the Health Alliance and other people that have been impacted by the fear of Triple E and so forth. So how we'll fund that, we're working through those details, but basically there is a cost. We want them to come out as soon as possible in the spring, so we might have to get invoiced. we will be looking for 17,000, which we raised in Article 1, so that will be squared away. If it were to fail, what happens to that money? It will just go to fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. And then next year, we've already accounted for the 71,000 coming off the cherry sheet, so we'll deal with that way as well. 26, some controversy relative to Article 26 and 7 Institute Road rear cell tower. We have a opportunity to sell or lease a piece of land. I think the bids are due back on the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at this area on a map, there is a cell tower at Indian Path that abuts a piece of property the town owns, and then the applicant for that tower was trying to move that tower or another tower closer to Greeny Drive, which planning board doesn't agree with. We certainly don't agree with. So we thought if we could get it further away from Greeny Drive, further away from populated areas, that would be better. Currently, there are no public safety antennas on that current tower on Indian Path. We have allowances for those on here, so our police and fire, first responders can have connectivity in the event of an emergency, and it would be a revenue stream for the town if we were to sell it. There is no other good use for the land, and the master plan and the bylaw calls for our public land, town-owned land, to be looked at first for cell towers. Joe Layden will probably talk to a little bit of detail at town meeting on this. We may even actually have him do another program because there's a lot of nuance in terms of applications being filed at planning that have nothing to do with this. But we see an opportunity to leverage the problems those particular applicants are having to benefit the town in two ways, financially and from a public safety standpoint. So there's no other motivation there other than that. But the bids will be in on the 11th, and town meeting can decide what they want to do with that particular parcel of land. It is landlocked, and whoever's a successful bidder has to prove that they have access to the land to build a cell tower on it.
Yeah.
You want to take 27 and 28?
So 27, 28, and 29 are all sewer department transfers. So the sewer commissioners have voted to request from town meeting approval to transfer funds from retained earnings to repair, replacement, upgrade accounts for various projects that they're undergoing. Sewer department just wrapped up a major project with the new building, and they're wrapping up the replacement of the pump stations in the next month or so. So, we've invested a lot of money in the sewer infrastructure in this town, and these funds will be used to maintain and keep up those new infrastructure pieces.
Good. And then finally, 30 is the last article. So we have a kind of a stock article. We like to keep the financial policy of the community is to have stabilization be between 5 and 10% of the operating budget. Right now, it stands at about 7%. But as that budget grows, that percentage contracts. So we try to incrementally add money when we can. Depending on how some articles play out, there could be an opportunity to put about 100,000 out of free cash into stabilization. So it's really just a bigger protection for that money that goes into stabilization. Free cash, as you know, can be allocated with a simple majority, but stabilization accounts take 2/3. So I think that's just an important piece. And obviously we go to bond DPW and the library long-term. When we bond those, we want to have a story to tell relative to our stabilization and free cash. So this just helps us show the bond rating agencies we do save in the event of a downturn, and they look upon that favorably, which when they do that, we get a better interest rate when we go to market. So, and that saves us all money. So that's the goal with that. So that is, those are the 30 articles we'll cover on the 21st at the high school at 7:30. Again, Rebecca mentioned the special election. We encourage people to come to town meeting, obviously to vote. If you have questions, comments, concerns, we want you to call us and talk to us, and we'll try to walk you through any and all of your questions, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.